This production is dedicated to the memory of Charles B. Hosmer, Jr., a nationally recognized historian of the architectural preservation movement in the United States and a professor of history at Principia College. Charles Hosmer introduced generations of students to Bernard Maybeck's visionary architectural plan for the college, and largely through his efforts, Principia College was granted National Historic Landmark status by the U.S. Department of Interior in 1993. Bernard Maybeck was a brilliant architect who designed buildings that read like epic tales. He told fascinating stories in brick and stone, tile and glass, wrought iron and sculpted concrete. The master plan and group of buildings that Maybeck designed for Principia College in Elsa, Illinois, reveal his understanding of the powerful effect of architecture on the human body, mind, and spirit. They also show his commitment to designing in harmony with nature.
He was quite struck by the natural beauty of the place and felt that his task really was to try to accommodate that in a series of buildings that would be right for this place.
This is a man who deeply believes that nature really teaches moral lessons, that you feel a wholeness from nature, and his architecture has to be a part of it and it has to grow out of it. For an architect with this dramatic setting, this is something that you have to be humble in front of. Your buildings must set in and grow out of the environment. And that's the challenge that he probably relished.
Bernard Maybeck was a 19th century romantic who used 20th century materials to create buildings that speak across time. The body of work that he bequeathed to the world is remarkably diverse, by turns rustic and refined, theatrical and sublime. His projects reveal an original vision, a reverence for nature, a commitment to community, and a deep and abiding love of beauty. Maybeck lived in Berkeley, California for most of his adult life, and the greatest concentration of his work is found in the San Francisco Bay Area. However, Maybeck's largest single project took place in the American heartland, more than half a continent away. In 1923, he began working on a master plan and 13 buildings for Principia College. He would later call the Principia project his favorite child. Principia had been founded in 1898 in St. Louis, Missouri by Mary Kimball Morgan, with the purpose of providing a holistic education rooted in Christian Science principles. Having designed the first Church of Christ Scientist in Berkeley, Maybeck was well acquainted with Christian Science. Although not a Christian Scientist himself, he had a strong spiritual sensibility, which found expression in such awe-inspiring works as the First Church of Christ Scientist in Berkeley.
The First Church of Christ Scientist in Berkeley is really one of the great architectural masterpieces in the United States. It's one of the very few buildings of its size which takes your breath away when you walk in. There's a kind of almost a musical quality to it. It's like listening to a great symphony. Only somebody who understood history and architecture, the different styles, as well as Maybeck did, could pull off something as successfully as Maybeck does.
Bernard Maybeck was recommended for the Principia Commission by Mary Kimball Morgan's son, Frederick Morgan, with whom he shared sympathetic views on art and architecture. The two men had met a few years earlier in Santa Barbara at the home of one of Maybeck's clients, Arthur Bingham. Maybeck had long been interested in master planning, which was considered the highest expression of architecture at the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris, where he studied. The chance to design an entire college campus was exhilarating to Maybeck.
He saw the Principia project as something of a chance of a lifetime. It allowed him to begin with a master plan, a general plan, which was very much a part of his training at the École des Beaux-Arts.
What makes the Principia project so important in Maybeck's career is its size and scope. He was aware that this was an opportunity to do more than develop a general plan and design several buildings. Here, through the force of his design, he could create a learning environment that would materially advance the educational goals of the school. He was particularly impressed with Mary Kimball Morgan's emphasis on character education.
What I think is really interesting about that word is that in architectural theory, Maybeck at the École des Beaux-Arts came out of a tradition in which caractère, to the French, the word character, meant all those values that go beyond mere function. It had to do with those spiritual aspects that found a certain coincidence in Maybeck's understanding of caractère and Mrs. Morgan's understanding of character education.
After consulting with students and staff, Bernard Maybeck decided that the most appropriate style for the campus was Tudor or Elizabethan, with the medieval English village providing a scenographic model.
Recognizing these students were being away from their home for 4 years, and this was essentially their home. He wanted to create a sense of that home environment, friendliness and domesticity, and what he thought embodied that in the best way was the English village.
A place where the communal can come together, but the individual can still grow. A place where you enjoy natural beauty. A place where you believe in a principle that's higher, that survives time, that there are foundational truths that we all look to and are guided by.
Within the overall design scheme, Maybeck varied architectural forms and stylistic details from building to building. In this way, he affirmed the individuality of the students and the diversity of life. From 1923 to 1930, Maybeck laid the groundwork for the new school, which was to be located on a 200-acre site in St. Louis called Loch Lynn. Then, in late 1930, on the eve of construction, a crisis arose that threatened the project. It was learned that a major road was slated to be built through the heart of the Loch Lynn property. Colette Collister, an art historian and former professor at Principia, recalls Maybeck's response when Frederick Morgan told him of the setback.
Morgan, the Christian Scientist, is absolutely despondent on this, and it's Maybeck who takes the lead. It's he who says, we haven't looked big enough, we haven't thought big enough. And then he pulls out 12 feet of brown paper and tacks it on the wall and begins to draw what an ideal campus should be.
Maybeck saw the crisis as an opportunity to find a larger, more picturesque site that would better accommodate future growth at the college. School officials were of the same mind and began searching for an alternate site. Before long, they succeeded in acquiring a large wooded parcel north of St. Louis in Elsa, Illinois. The 2,000-acre site sits atop a limestone bluff overlooking the broad Mississippi River. The natural beauty of the area was captured in a series of paintings by the artist Frederick Oakes Sylvester, who taught at Principia.
It's an incredible view. You come to the bluffs and you look across to this infinite horizon and you see the Missouri River beyond the Mississippi. It's an absolutely humbling experience to see this natural beauty.
Unfortunately, today we've become very suspicious of the word beauty, whereas Maybeck and those of his generation were not at all. It was a fundamental component of the arts, and particularly of architecture.
For Maybeck, beauty was sacred, an expression of a greater reality, a higher dimension of life. To him, beauty was essential for human well-being, and creating beauty was the highest purpose of art and architecture.
I think he felt that beauty is as much a human need as food, sleep. To create a healthy individual, you must be, as much as possible, surrounded by beauty.
Maybeck came to visit the site and thought this was almost beyond him. He was absolutely ecstatic about what he saw. He came up to this virgin site high on the bluffs and wandered through the hills and said, "This is an opportunity of a lifetime for an architect."
Maybeck loved the nearby village of Elsa, a quaint river town with a wealth of 19th century vernacular architecture. Elsa reinforced his thinking about the village atmosphere he planned for Principia, and it also afforded useful examples of local stonework. Construction of the first building at Principia, the college chapel, began in 1931. It was not English Tudor, however. Rather, it was a style that would have been at home in New England. This was at the request of the students, whose views Maybeck had solicited.
There were several specifications that came out of those dialogues with the students, one of which was that the chapel at the college would be in a New England colonial revival style. This associated the style of architecture with those New England colonial churches, which were prominent in the environment in which Christian Science was founded out of Boston, Massachusetts.
In his work at Principia, Maybeck showed a keen interest in craft and in the artful treatment of surfaces.
Maybeck believed strongly that the buildings should not compete with nature but would become a part of the natural setting. That got translated here at the college by choices of building materials.
Looking at the college chapel, for example, it's clear that much of its beauty lies in the handling of the limestone facing. When ordering the stone at a quarry in Bedford, Indiana, Maybeck instructed the workers to shot saw the blocks, leaving iron filings in the cut stone, which would rust over time, creating a rich, dappled surface. While a departure from his earlier stylistic interests, the college chapel had a special place in Maybeck's heart. Reflecting on its purity of line and quiet but eloquent beauty, he considered it among the most fully realized of his many buildings. Bernard Maybeck was not always on site at Principia, and he needed a way to communicate his ideas to the workers there. To that end, he created something called the Sample House, which was later nicknamed the Mistake House. It featured examples of materials, craft techniques, and artistic effects.
He was training workmen to become craftsmen, but he was also evaluating whether techniques would work or not work in location.
And what's interesting about the Sample House is that it's almost like an artist who paints a small study before he does the large canvas. The sample house had a concrete roof on one slope and a gunite roof on the other, with the idea that this would be applicable to the dormitories. Howard became the first dormitory constructed, and it was concrete from ridge of roof all the way down to the ground.
Perhaps because of his experience with fires and other natural disasters in California, Maybeck built Howard House and other buildings at Principia to high standards, using structural steel and reinforced concrete. Even the roof of Howard House is concrete. Still, Maybeck molded the material to his artistic purposes, in this case, rounding the eaves to soften the profile. Often, as with Buck House, a men's dormitory, Maybeck combined contrasting forms in a single building to create a specific scenographic effect. In this case, the impression of an English village.
From a distance, this dormitory looks like a grouping of stone cottages that ends with a manor house.
I've described Maybeck's architecture, particularly at Principia College, as scenographic. Setting the proper scene and designing a total architecture would allow him to work with the landscape architect and with the stylistic detailing and overall massing of buildings as they nestle into these sites. The important thing was that he saw the architecture as a grand scheme, a totality, a complete vision.
Maybeck's artistic oversight extended to such details as the type, color, and placement of roof tiles.
The final touch for Maybeck often was the roofing material, because it gave a painterly palette and a softness of profile to the overall aesthetic.
For Buck House, he created elaborate color charts and specified particular visual effects to enliven the roofs. These colors were calibrated to native flora, including lilac bushes and flowering redbud and dogwood trees.
It's color that he is drawing from nature. This is again the artist not dominating the environment, but using the environment after long observation.
Inside Buck House, Maybeck's skillful handling of concrete can be seen in a beautifully sculpted staircase. Maybeck's most spectacular interior at Principia is found in a woman's dormitory, Anderson Hall, where he created a stunning living room and staircase, all in concrete. Notably, even the dramatic roof trusses are made of concrete, formed around steel beams.
The result is probably his noblest and most manorial interior space within the dormitories. It has a vast fireplace off to one side with almost expressionistic bubble stone set of flames extending out from the top of the fireplace. It has a focus at one end on a grand staircase and has a wonderful, almost Art Nouveau kind of S-scroll cast iron piece to accent it.
Most of Maybeck's buildings at Principia are residence halls. He designed academic buildings as well, but because of the difficult economic conditions during the Great Depression, few were actually built. An exception is a science center, the Watson Laboratories. Maybeck fitted the low, meandering complex to the contour of the land, again evoking the feeling of an English village.
And if I didn't realize that I was on a college campus, I would think I was on a side road in a Cotswold village, walking past a grouping of shops and stone cottages that had been there at least from the 19th century. And the closer I get, the more I realize that I'm not dealing with old, roughly hewn stone. I'm dealing with tile.
When ordering tile for the Watson laboratories, Maybeck asked the manufacturer to leave imperfections in the work, including handprints, saying they would add to the character of the buildings. A post covered with broken pieces of roof tile surprises and delights.
This is Maybeck, the inspired artist, I think, because he just walks around other construction sites around Watson and picks up broken tiles, colored broken tiles, and inserts them into the concrete post.
Near the Watson laboratories, nestled in a picturesque ravine, is one of Maybeck's last projects at Principia, the Maury Fieldhouse. For the rear of the building, which faces the Watson complex, Maybeck specified the same tiles used on the Watson buildings. This had the effect of connecting the structures visually, affording a feeling of communal unity. The minimalist concrete and steel building was designed to serve double duty, functioning both as a gymnasium and an auditorium. Here it's seen in its gymnasium configuration. More recently, Maury Fieldhouse was repurposed as a performing arts center. Maybeck's imaginative and playful approach to craft can also be seen in his instructions to masons working on a large window at Rackham Court, one of the men's residence halls. He urged them to apply the mortar joining the stone and bricks casually to create the effect of a repair made long ago by an inexperienced mason.
On the one hand, Maybeck was one of the most formally and elaborately trained fine artist architects in American history. One of the things that Maybeck had as the corollary of that was that he was a type that would roll up his sleeves and get messy in the mortar. There is a wonderful artisan craftsmanly quality of these buildings that's a result of that.
It's just, again, a balancing of opposites, the balancing of the rugged with the sophisticated, the refined with the simple. And it works. It works.
In all his work at Principia, Maybeck used art and craft to affirm both the individuality of the students and the bonds that unite them in community. He sought to create an inspiring learning environment that fosters creativity and excellence.
I love the way the buildings are so majestic, and the materials that he uses, how he combines everything from the bricks to the stones and the wood, and just how everything fits together. It's majestic, but at the same time, humbling. When I look at Maybeck's architecture, I see stability. I see beauty. I see attention to detail. And all these are things that I would like to express in my work or something that I do in life. I'm able to see that in his work and appreciate it. It does inspire me.
Bernard Maybeck stepped down from the Principia project in 1938 after 15 years of shaping the school's learning environment. He was 76 years old. By that time, he had been practicing architecture for 50 years and had created a large and distinguished body of work. In 1951, the American Institute of Architects awarded Bernard Maybeck its highest distinction, the Gold Medal of Honor. Acknowledging his lifelong pursuit of beauty, the AIA praised Maybeck as an artist ever free in spirit, with a hunger for beauty that is never satisfied.